Let me know when you could hear me. Matt, are you there?
Not yet.
Can anybody?
Need a fan that doesn't make noise.
That'd be nice.
That thing is horrible. How do you stand it?
It's really hard.
Yeah, it is. That'll just drive you nuts all day long.
Put headphones in, that's a little bit better, but
Don't worry, Mitch. I'll order us some new fans. We'll get some Dyson ones.
I'm up with volume.
We got me, Matt?
Gotcha.
Alrighty. Well, I'm just checking out all the work we got going on this week. But it is Shock Therapy Live Technical Tuesday, and we got a fun one today, going over something that we may know one or two things about.
You just ran over Matt. Did you see that? That would have been good to have you fall down.
Did I get him?
You almost. He almost got you back though. That's for sure.
He did stay out of frame though.
Oh, very good.
He was
Thanks,
so
Matt.
small, I didn't even see him.
So it's Tuesday, Technical Tuesday. So we're gonna tech it up just a little bit. We get a lot of questions, a lot of comments about valving. We've gone over how valving works in the past, but we're gonna do it again. But this time we're gonna show you a little bit about the differences between valving, and I don't mean how you valve a shock. I mean the differences in quality in valving, and how those valve shims work, how they last, maybe how they break as well. So if you have any questions about shock internals or valving, then please throw them out there. If it's off topic, we'll get to you towards the end, okay?
We got Chapo Racing in the house.
How's it going? Ernesto?
I
Thanks for-
also like to point out it's also Taco Tuesday, and I wore a special shirt.
Oh, is that, you
Yeah.
want me to show something?
Yeah, this one was specifically for George. It's a Let's Talk About It for Taco Tuesday.
Oh,
Dirt
George
Life.
Hamill. Very good.
And it goes with my pink taco shoes.
Pink taco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. I'm glad you fit that in there.
Bad Habit Off-Roading, yes, these are all posted on the YouTube page.
All right.
Unless not they're posted.
All right, very good. So back to valving, you guys. These are valving boxes that we use here at the shop. It's basically every size, shape, and color for valving. Valving is, for the most part, differentiated by the diameter of the shim and the thickness of the shim. So, come on over here, Chase. If you take a look at this one. This one is a 10 thousandths valve shim. Means it's 10 thousandths of an inch thick. You can go 6s, 8s, 10s, 12s, 15s, 20s. And as they get thicker, they're going to get stiffer. And the thicker the shim, basically the rougher the car rides. So the simplest way to put it is if you take a shim that's very easy and thin, or easy to move and bend, and you replace it with one that's very, very hard to move or bend, that will ultimately slow down the piston movement inside the shock. That can be done on the rebound side, it can be done on the compression side. So if you put stiffer or thicker shims on the compression side, then the car is going to be stiffer or feel firmer on the compression hit or compression stroke. If you put that on the rebound side, it will slow the extension down. That is the simplest way to tell you how valving affects how a car works. Now, how does it actually control that feel? So come over to the board, the magic school teacher board, since we're having school in class and not homeschooling like everybody else is internet schooling right now.
It's like everyone else at home.
Yeah, exactly. So if you see right next to Chase, we've got some pistons here. So if you were to take the shock body off of your shocks, you would have the shaft coming in, you'd have compression valving, you'd have a piston with a couple of holes inside, and you have rebound valving and a nut or a washer. And in a compression stroke, like I have drawn this way, the shaft goes into the shock and is surrounded by oil. This oil is going to be forced through these ports in the piston, and they come out the bottom of the piston, and they take a flat valve shim and they fold it out of the way, allowing the oil to go around that valve shim. The amount of force that it takes to bend that valve shim around is what you feel in the seat of your pants. So if you have very thin valving, then this is easy to move. It's also easy to push the piston through the oil, which is a softer riding car on the compression stroke. If you go thicker valving on the compression side, it makes it a lot harder to bend the valving out of the way, allowing the piston to move. It's harder to move the piston, which is a stiffer or firmer riding car on the compression side. When you flip that around and go on the rebound stroke, so this is compressed, and now you're in the air and the tire's falling out and the piston is extending. If the piston is extending, then oil is being forced through the piston in another direction, It's actually a different set of holes for rebound than there are in compression. I'll show you that in a minute. But that oil is forced around the compression stack through the piston, and it bends the rebound shims out of the way, allowing the oil to pass through. The thickness of these rebound shims and how you control the stack will control the speed of this piston moving through oil, which is how quickly or slowly the tire will extend. You got something funny there, Chase?
Oh, I'm just shaking the camera every time you say stroke, according to Rich Fortin here. I'm trying, Rich, okay?
You can't help yourself, can you?
I can't.
You know, what about this? What if this valving was exactly 69 thousandths of an inch? You'd be really happy about that?
I'd be shaking like crazy.
Yeah, you would. Okay, so there's a compression stroke, there's rebound stroke. They affect different valve stacks by obviously controlling the compression and rebound on which side of the piston might have it, and the thickness and design of the shim. Now, shim stack. This shim stack, which is a progressive stack, is called a velocity sensitive valving system. Velocity sensitive, velocity is speed. And it's not how fast you drive the car, it's how fast this piston is moving in one direction or another. You notice that these shim stacks start off with a large valve shim and get smaller, smaller, and smaller, and it creates kind of a pyramid stack. This is because the first shim is fairly easy to move. When it moves enough or far enough, it actually will start to move the second shim. And the second shim moves the third, moves the fourth, moves the fifth. Sometimes these things have 8 shims in them, depends on the shock, depends on the diameter. But the harder you hit it, the more shims have to be moved to allow oil to go by, which creates a velocity sensitive system. In essence, the harder or faster the piston moves, or the harder you hit it, or the harder you jump or land, or the bigger obstacle that you hit, the faster the piston moves, the more valving comes into play, the stiffer the system becomes. So it's progressively stiffer. That's the simplest way to talk about it. There's a ton of other ways to go about it. We can pull shims out and space these out and change the thicknesses. We might start off with 8s, go to 10s, go to 12s. We might start off with 12s and go to 15s. These are the simplest things. I'm not even giving away any secrets. I could go on and on and on. Hundreds of different ways that you could do this for millions of different valving combinations. There's also a big difference in how the pistons are designed and the quality in the valving, and I'm going to go into that next. If you've got anything, Mitch or Matt, and we'll do it before I talk about quality.
I do. J-Hups 24 kind of beat us to it here, but it's this topic we're going to talk about. How long does typical valving last under normal recreational riding?
So J-Hubs, I'm going to talk about that right now when we get back over to the bench. What do you got, Matt?
Chad Lasky wants to know, why does the factory get it so wrong?
So you can't really yell and scream at the factory for getting valving and overall suspension performance wrong. They've got a lot of things, criteria that they have to fall into, like rollover tests, for instance. So they might get a car that works perfect, they take it to the government puts it in a rollover test, which is 25 miles an hour on asphalt, take the wheel full crank. If it picks one tire up, it fails. So they'll take a perfect car, go there, fail the test, and then they'll just put super stiff springs on it, or they'll run a compressed upper that jumps into the lower rate right away so that it stops body roll and hopefully passes the test. That's not good enough. They'll run the pressures of the shock all the way up, they'll run the valving all the way up, just to make sure they pass the test. But whatever passes that test is what must be sold. So that's why you saw Can-Ams the first year that they came out sitting 10 inches off the ground and having an upper spring completely compressed, because they had to lower the car to pass the rollover test, and that ride height have to be sold to our customers, to their customers. And that's why there was a Fox setup that raised the car and set the adjusters and crossovers in a different spot, which basically put it back to where Fox had it before the rollover test. So the reason we're in business is because of a lot of government rules. If the factory misses it, then we've got plenty we can modify. So we kind of like the government rules when it comes to this stuff. Unfortunately, that just happens.
Wanted to give a shout out to our boy Ryan Peacock over at Ride Now, as well as Team YXE. What's up, guys? And Diversified Fab. We're not talking right now. You stole my purple bike. I'm coming for you with a rain of fireworks. It is war, brother.
So at the last race, at the race, the guy stole Chase's bike and he didn't know it till he got home. He was pretty pissed, but he deserved it because he was a dick the whole time. Mitch.
Can you change performance by changing just oil viscosity?
Yeah, if you change oil viscosity, if you go thinner, it's going to ride softer, smoother, might bottom out though. If you go thicker on the oil viscosity, then it will ride a little bit stiffer, more firm, maybe you can feel the chop and the chatter a little bit more. So typically when you change oil, you're going to change valving to accommodate, but you can just change oil if you want to, absolutely. So back to valving life, valving quality, back to the bench. So there's multiple styles of valving when it comes to how it's made, the material that it's made of. But one of the things that you can see just simply, I'm not sure if you can see this right, Chase, but what I'm looking for is a color difference.
Yes, oh yes.
See, this is kind of a brown
Copper.
color,
Yeah.
right? Copper in color. This is more of a silver or stainless in color. Okay, these are two different materials. This material right here can be one of two things. It's either it's a spring steel, but it's a 1095 grade. So 1095 spring steel that's coated, just like you would have in a leaf spring in a truck. It's designed to flex over and over. That's fairly low grade. It could also be a stainless steel, which would be a 301 or 302 full hard on the heat treat. That stainless is very common. You find this in King's. You're going to find this in Walker Evans. You're going to find it in some other shock manufacturers as well. This silver or stainless looking one right here is actually the highest quality material that you can use, which is a Sandvik 20C. Sandvik 20C, it's kind of a trademark name for the grade of material this is, but it's a high carbon stainless, which is really known for perfectly flat surface, great heat resistance. It'll bend, and its cycle time is much higher than any of the stainless or the spring steels. So back to the original question, I forget what that guy's name or screen name was, but when it comes to valving life, spring steel lasts the least amount of time. I don't know the exact cycle time, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1 million to 1.5 million cycles. What's a cycle? That's full bend and return. 1.5 million.
J Hoops 24.
Okay. When you get into the stainless steel stuff, you're going to get cycle times that are about 2.5, maybe 3 million cycles. And then these things start to fail. When you get into Sandvik 20, you're looking at about 10.5 million to 12 million cycles before this starts to have issues. So there's a drastic difference in the quality of valving. Now, even though King and Walker run the lesser of the grades, it doesn't make it bad, but it does make it to where it fails a little bit on the early side, especially if you run your car a lot or through the whoops. Remember, a cycle is bending the shim. So if you don't drive it very hard, not all the shims bend enough to create a cycle. You go into a Sandvik, it's 2 or 3 times the cost per shim in material to run this stuff. But just so you guys know, this is the only stuff that we run. Now, we actually have our own valving made, and we make it only out of Sandvik 20. So when we get shocks in here that have, old or a couple years on the stainless stuff that comes maybe in a standard Walker, we're pulling that valving out of the shock and we're replacing it with the high dollar and high quality valving that we actually have made. I'll go into a little bit more of that when we get over to our valving inventory, and I'll show you some of the drawers where we have stocked up some of the valving that we pull out of shocks. But another thing that can affect shock or valving is the design of the piston. So if you take one of these shims and you lay it on top of the piston, you can see these 3 oval holes are the ports that oil is going to come up through and bend this valve shim out of the way, like that, allowing the oil to pass by. But when this piston starts to go up instead of down, then oil is trying to go through this oval hole, and the shim is stopping that. Well, this oval hole doesn't have very much support in it, so it's very easy to fold the shim into that hole and break it. Now, this is a Walker piston. You start looking at some other designs. Well, look, see, this one's got multiple holes instead of one big oval. The reason that they do that is to make sure that when the valving is sitting and covering that hole, it has a support in the center of the valving so that that valving does not break off in the small holes like it would in a big oval hole. So piston design is a big factor when it comes to valving longevity. And you'll see a lot of valving in Walkers that's broken. There's 2 reasons for that. 1, because of the piston design, it's easy to fold in. 2, the material that's used isn't the highest grade. You won't find that in a Fox. You're gonna find the Sandvik material, you're gonna find a better designed piston. And if we've touched the shock, then you're gonna see a lot of this material always put into the shocks. If valving breaks, it's because of the valving, it's because of the piston, it's not because of the guy that changed the valving, you know? So we actually change that. And it's all part of what we do internally as well. Any questions?
Mark Shack wants to know, with the eventual Pro R, will mounting on a lower control arm change scrub radius and change the way you do shock setups?
Okay, so mounting a shock on the bottom arm isn't going to change scrub radius at all. Scrub radius is affected by the spindle design. Spindle design is not affected by shock mounting position. So hopefully their design of that spindle and overall kingpin angle and wheel offset is correct, and we won't have to deal with it. But it has nothing to do with mounting the shock on the bottom arm. The fact that they've mounted the shock on the bottom arm means that they've probably got the shock leaned into a better position, which would be more of a vertical. Perfect shocked angle is a shock on a lower control arm. When it's fully compressed, the shock is at 90 degrees to the arm. Now that R has the shock in a much better position for that, and once we get one, then we'll cycle it and we'll tell you exactly what's up. But I have a feeling it's going to be a lot nicer than any of the previous models just by looking at the shock angle. So all those things are stuff that we take into consideration when we're tuning cars, but I just know it's going to be better all the way around. Scrub radius has nothing to do with shock mounting.
Robert Campbell asks, how do you fix the last inch or so on the Fox internal bypass shocks, the bump zone, allowing the oil to just blow into the reservoir and not cycle through the piston and valve stack?
On an internal bypass, there is no oil port in the bump stage that fills the reservoir. That's all on the outside. So I don't know what you mean by that. So I don't have one apart to show you, but the internal bypass tube, when you get into the bump zone, there is not a hole on top feeding the reservoir. All of the reservoir oil is fed through the side bypass tube ports on the outside and going to the resi. Nothing is in the bump stage. So when you do get into the bump stage, it's all piston, all valving, or unless you've got a hole drilled, but that would be it. Mitch?
I had one here. Yeah, Reno 67, just got to say, shock therapy springs were the best money I've ever spent on my Pro XP.
Right on, man. I'm glad you like your spring kit on your XP. Thanks for signing in and telling us all that. Let's go over and look at some valving in the shock area. Some of the guys are working as we speak on a bunch of stuff. So we'll take you over there and show you a little bit about valving inventory for us. Valve shims can range in cost from a retail perspective in the neighborhood of 75 cents for very small shims to $2.50 for a larger diameter shim and something that's a lot thicker. So if you take an average of about $1.25 or $1.50 per shim, then you have an idea of about what we've got laying around here when it comes to valving. So that valving box that I showed you over in Mitch's area, that has about, we figured one day about 16,000 shims in it, right?
Yeah, I forget what it was.
Actually, it was a little bit less, but it was about $30,000 worth of valve shims that are in one of those boxes on the bench. So, and we have one of those boxes for every one of our shop techs over here. Go ahead, Steve. Blast it. Yeah, just another day in the shock area at Shock Therapy, that's for sure. But it's important that we have everything so we can tune a system exactly the way it needs to be done for that customer's needs. But if the guys ever run out, then they can come over to our inventory and grab more shims. So in this box alone, there's probably 45,000 valve shims in here at about $1.50 a piece. And you can see about what it takes to back up the number of guys that we have doing shocks every day to make sure they have what they need every single time, and they're not missing any shim for any possible setup. Obviously we rebuild a lot and we actually have our own O-rings and everything made too, but that has nothing to do with valving. So let's go over here real quick in Brandon's area and we'll show you just some of the valve shims that I'll just show you. Okay, so this drawer, 2 bins deep. That's an empty one. Sorry, there's a full one. 2 bins deep. These are all valve shims that we have removed from Walker Evans shocks. Now, what do you think this is, Brandon? A couple months?
Yeah, at least.
Yep, couple of months. So this is just the amount that we go through and pull out of stuff and replace with the higher grade valve shims, and also a valve stack situated the way we want to tune the car. Valving is just one way you can make the car ride better. You know, piston design, oil flows overall, valving in the bump stage. If it's a bypass, even more side stacks and side stack port diameters, shaft hole diameters, and spring kits. All of those things come together when it comes to how a car rides. But number one, it starts with quality valving that's gonna last a long time. If you bring your shock back to us that we've touched, you're gonna get all the valving upgrades free when you pay for rebuild. So that's a kind of a perk that we always give out. What do you guys got?
Javier asked if we sell the valves and shim.
You know, we don't, like, we're not set up to do that. And we certainly don't sell our valve stack that we put in a specific car unless you're paying for all the tuning work to get done. But we might actually. It's a good thing to bring up. We might actually have valving for sale on site soon. So thanks for reminding me, Mitch. Remind me. We'll put it on site.
Got it. Jason Husteen wants to know, will you guys tune Kings for an XP 1000?
We used to do that routinely. We're gonna tell you no. The reason is we're kind of getting out of it. It's very hard to make that shock work very well on most of the side-by-sides, and we'd rather have a perfect setup for everything that we touch. So we're gonna say no on Kings.
I got one. Justin, is there anything in valving that hasn't been done, and what do you expect to see in the future of valving from here?
So a velocity sensitive stack like we've seen is probably the best design. There's many that have been done. There's actually a check valve, or inertia valve it's called, a couple other designs. I think that it'll always be there, but what's going to happen in the future is more electronic and computer control. I have a feeling that valving will start to go away and be replaced with magnetic valve, computer controlled valving, basically. That's quite a ways off. I've seen some of them. They're being tested, but nothing you're going to see in UTVs for quite maybe a decade.
Robert Pearson wants to know, why do the Fox shocks on his 2018 Fox Edition Razor leak through the seal at the bottom of the reservoir, and best way to fix?
Well, the shaft seal is usually the place that all shocks have a leak. It's not specific to that year or to that shock. It might be more specific to where you drive. So if you're in mud that sticks to the shaft, then that's always going to be slapping up against the seal and take seals out a lot quicker. If you're in the sand, you tend to take out shaft seals a lot faster because the sand will sit on top of the bump stop, and when you compress the shock and the sand is basically rammed into the seal, that'll make it happen quicker. But otherwise, you just rebuild it and go with the best seal possible. It's the only thing you can do.
We got a live one. What's going on? Alex, how old are you? What are you driving? And where are you at? And what's your question?
She's 10 and has an 800 of her own.
Awesome. That is super sweet. What type of driving are you doing, and what's your question?
Good question. Is when will you do Noka, and what event are you looking forward to the most?
What event are we looking forward to the most?
That's a good one, actually. Matt, why don't you answer that question, bud? Matt's going to beat all the events.
We're looking forward to actually getting back on the road. We will be at Oklahoma in September for UTV Takeover. Hopefully after that, we'll get to go to Glamis. So
Maybe
stay tuned
Camp
on
Razor,
that.
certainly. Yeah. If they don't throw out, who knows? But we'll, be in the dunes. That's always a good one. Then
Camp
after
Razor's
that,
my favorite.
yep, Camp Razor's Mitch's favorite. That's
We have UTV Takeover in Sand Hollow we'll be at.
Yep.
In Utah, which will be a first for that event. And then hopefully, if Sandsport goes on, we'll be at Sandsport, so you can see the entire line of stuff we've got.
But I will tell you this: my favorite is Camp Razor in Glamis. I think it's Mitch's too, but I think that Matt likes to go to all of them.
All of them are cool too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Get
the
out of the shop.
Start of the sand season though. It's always
That's right.
It's always a good one.
Awesome.
How about you? Do you have an event you go to?
We're excited for the scavenger hunt in Winoka.
I gotcha. Winoka, Oklahoma.
We're going UTV Takeover.
Well, good. Well, then you're gonna see Matt there. You're gonna
Stop by and say hi.
Yeah, say hi to Matt. Say hi to Savino. They'll definitely be there, and I might fly in and take a look too.
We will. Awesome. awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Thank you. Make sure you give us a shirt size and a color. And remember, we've got tank tops and stuff. Lauren's got a good selection of those. So send us a message as to what you want. We'll get it to you.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Thank
Thank you.
you. You too. Bye bye.
Bro Denali wants to know if we'll be offering rebuilds on shocks at UTV Takeover.
No, at this time, we're not going to be doing any actual shock internal work at UTV Takeover or shock tuning on cars. We're going to be there with a booth. We will have product. So if you want to buy things like racks and you're planning on bringing stuff, right?
Yeah,
racks or,
We're bringing product. We'll also be setting up appointments so we can walk you through the whole appointment process if you do want to send shocks in. 2021 might be a different thing, but with all the restrictions and kind of coming late to the party, we just won't be able to do it this year. So
maybe next year. We'll see how this event goes, and if it goes really well, then we'll come back out with a semi and set up for real. And to answer one of the questions that I saw, Mitch, the only way we get the best looking shock guys in the industry is it's a stringent, very, very stringent process of job interviewing. It has something to do with a casting call on the couch and, sexual favors. That's usually how the best looking guys get hired here.
I go over all the resumes.
You are so wrong. What else you guys got?
Only calamari, unless Chase is gonna.
I got Rich Felix, who I'm trying to get connected here, but he's out
You
there.
don't have Rich if he's not connected. Do not raise your hand unless they're signed on. You do this every single time.
I try. It's timing, Justin.
got,
It's what
Mitch?
life's all about.
Only calamari wants to know, he's replacing his old Polaris soon to an X3. Do you think it's worth getting the Smart Shock one?
Yeah, I think Smart Shocks are awesome. They still need internal work, and they probably need some spring work too. But having the ability to tune it on the fly, or at least turn it up and down stiffness-wise, is awesome. I mean, I prefer dynamics in Polaris, so Smart Shocks in an X3 is a great thing.
Chapo wants to know when we will be expecting to have upgrades for that car as well.
Ooh, so Ernesto, I think I need you to ask your buddy when he's getting the first one that we've talked about. He said he was going to send it over the second he got it. And I think you know which buddy we're talking about. But as soon as we get that, then we'll have tuning within a month.
Good one here, Big J Dubs. After how many mile or trail play car miles do you guys like to see walkers with your springs for a revalve refresh?
About 2,500 to 3,500 miles. If you run the car hard, then bring it in at 25. If you run it, milder, or don't drive that hard, then 3,500.
We got Coleman live on the air. Coleman, what's up, brother? Where are you at? What are you driving, and what's your question?
I drive the Ace 900 just down at Shark Therapy.
Nice, awesome, man.
So said he dropped it off. I had him drive it out, haul it out there today.
Awesome. You got any questions for us while you got all that going on?
If you guys can do valving, are you guys gonna test it?
Are we gonna test it when we do the valving on his car?
Typically, we're not taking every car out and running it through the desert anymore. We do a lot of cars a day. It'd be physically impossible. But we've done so many that according to the details that you filled out on your form, we're gonna dial it in to that. And that's gonna be your accessories. It's gonna be how you drive and where you drive. And it's very, very rare that we have to do a car twice. I would say once a month out of 1,000 vehicles a month, we might have to readdress one. But that's just to get it closer to that person's personal preference. So we don't test them, but I think you're gonna be happy we'll pretty much nail it.
Looks like we lost Green Machine there on the feed. I'll try to connect back here again. We got any more questions, Mitchy boy?
Victor wants to know, if you were to buy one UTV, a 4-seater, which would you get if you don't want to modify it too much, just to ride around with the wife and kids?
Ooh.
XP Pro Dynamics.
I agree. George says, man, we love that Jeanette's car.
Yes, this thing is coming along. We've got a few more things to do. Namely, we have to finish the fabrication in the bed of this thing, which is going to be a full mini bar with mimosas. And we also have air conditioning to install in this thing, which is basically sitting on the shelf waiting for us to put it in. As soon as all those things are done and some wheels, then this is gonna end up going back to her, and she's gonna put a ton of miles on that, I guarantee it. What do you got, Matt?
What is the best fluid in your opinion, brand and viscosity?
Well, for cost, if it's a Fox, then I would run the Fox Race Fluid, which is a 5-weight oil, and it is red for race color. I'm not a fan of the King oil. I'm not a fan of the Walker oil. We don't run any of those. We actually run a full synthetic that we have blended for us, and we do not sell it at this time. We might, though. We might start selling it by the gallon. It's kind of spendy, though. The stuff that we use is easily over $100 a gallon. Our cost.
John Todd G, that car passed me on the freeway in St. George.
I doubt it. It was pretty much here, but it's maybe something close. What do you got, Mitch?
Desert Motorsports, any update on your super secret sway bar for the Pro XP?
Yeah, we're testing right now. That's all I'm gonna tell you. But it's
super cool.
massively adjustable, and it looks really bitchin'.
Mega Desert Diesel. Seems like a lot of thumbing nose to Can-Am lately. Did you guys get spammed or planning on switching teams like Chase does?
I like that one. I think you nailed it with the Chase thing, but no, we're not thumbing our nose at Can-Am. We're not changing teams. If you take it that way, I'm sorry, but the only thing that we do is we tell the truth according to our experience, and if there is a problem with something, we're gonna say it. If something's badass, we're gonna say it. So maybe we've just been on the wrong subjects for Can-Am.
Skylar Madison wants to know, what can you guys do with the Walker Evans on a Turbo S Velocity? Seems very rough at low speed sections and rocks.
We'll fix it, like night and day, fix it. That Walker Evans on that car wakes up with internal tuning and also spring kit. That was one of the cars that we just did not too long ago, revisited, huh, Mitch? It was like night and day better instantly. So we have a really good package for that car.
Hayden Walker Howard, give us a hint of something new that's coming. I think we already did that with the Pro.
Yeah, pro sway bar coolness there, and I don't mean just a simple ass sway bar. There's actually more to it than that.
One Jose, hey Jose sir, is the Talon 4-seater back geometry as bad as the 2-seater Talon?
The geometry is exactly the same. There is no difference. The only difference is wheelbase. Technically, you have more weight on the front of that car in a 4-seater, which would make it ride worse. But longer wheelbase rides better in the whoops, so they kind of cancel each other out. But the geometry is exactly the same as a 2-seater.
Breaker Boys crew, if Brappo gets a new car, will you guys please help him send it? I haven't heard of that name in a while. God,
Benny?
I gotta call me Benny.
Yeah, no, you know, Benny's awesome, but we don't support airtime. We
Come
just
on.
don't. You know why? Because it's gonna go bad at some point in time, and we can't be associated with a 200-foot failure.
But the airtime and the content, Justin, just give Benny and I a car, let's go.
Nope, nope,
No.
nope, nope, nope. So Benny, if you want to go racing, we'll set it up. If you want to go jumping, sorry.
I got Jim Klein wants to know, I got a Pro XP that you got that we did the internals on in springs, hit 1,000 miles. Anything he needs to adjust?
You know, make sure that you check your ride heights, because the springs were new when we did it, and certainly they would have taken a set in the first 200 or 300 miles. And you might have added more accessories, ate more burgers, packed more beer. I don't know, but check your ride heights, make sure that they're correct, raise it accordingly. It'll bring ride quality back. Other than that, there isn't anything you have to touch. Don't worry about it till about 3,000 miles, and we'll update the internals. We got Mitch. Besides wanting to slap Chase.
So yeah, that's pretty much all the time. Ryan Roundtree said, I have a 2020 Turbo S. Website said that you need to do valving at the same time as springs. Can you not do springs only first? We're still waiting for springs, and then it's ready to go.
There's your answer. No, you don't have to do them together.
No.
And we're not forcing you to do them together. It's just a really good idea because they work together. But you can do spring kit first. We do that almost all the time.
We're just waiting.
We're just waiting for one specific spring to show up, and COVID has really screwed up our inventory, because a lot of other states like Michigan, Texas have shut down almost completely, Colorado, and a lot of the suppliers for good quality metals are in there, and so it's kind of slowed down spring production for us. But as soon as that spring's here, we have a full kit. All right, you guys are about done.
I got actually one more here. This is a good one. Mark Shack says, can you give a quick description between regular walkers versus Walker Velocity versus Foxwick Dynamics?
Regular walker is a piston with valving, and it has a needle in the top of the shock for a bump stage. When that needle engages the shaft or the hole in the shaft, which makes Chase very happy, you get the bump stage through that. On a Velocity, there's a needle in that too, right? But they've lowered the, Mitch, there's a needle in a Velocity, right?
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah.
So in a Velocity, they're using a needle for a bump stage, but they're also using the lowered reservoir port as a similar bump stage. So instead of having the reservoir off the head of the shock, the Velocity has it in the mid position, kind of where the bump stage starts. So when the piston passes that port for the resi, then it gets a little bit more bump stage by not pushing any oil into the reservoir, and then it gets into the needle. So a Velocity is a more progressive shock than a standard Walker. A Fox Dynamics is piston valving. Some of them are an RC2 style with a cup, but the main where the cup and secondary piston give you bump stage, which is also valved, but it has electronic control. It also it can react to whatever the car is doing, how you're driving, and it works a lot better than either of the previous two. Also, that Fox is a little higher quality when it comes to the valving that's in it, like we've talked today, some of the high temp or heat treated coatings, anodizing, so that Fox shock's gonna last a lot longer than the previous two. Hopefully that's a good, quick, not very quick explanation of all three. Good. All right, Matt.
I have a couple questions that came up, but I've been holding to the end.
You're dying to tell them, I can see. What do you got?
A couple guys have asked what happened at the race.
Geez.
That's why I was waiting to
And Chase, I would suggest you keep your mouth shut, because if you open it, I'm gonna completely kick you in the nuts. Here's the deal. I am going to spend 1 second per race mile that we went on this description. Ready? Count 15 seconds. We had an electrical issue that caused the engine to go into limp mode consecutively on weird times. We could not diagnose it. At race mile 15, we had passed 3 or 4 cars, but we had to call the race and came home. Done. So we sucked. But the good news is the car is 100% prepped, and we are not gonna have to spend any time on it for the next race. Once we diagnose our issue, which we pretty much think we figured it out yesterday, we'll verify that with some testing tomorrow. There it is.
I knew you didn't want
Thank you so much, Matt,
I was
for
holding
pointing that
on
out.
as long as I could. But
Yeah.
It kept popping up, and
Hey man, sometimes that crap will happen. It's racing. Well, what are you gonna do? So, thank you guys for tuning in. Technical Tuesday. Hopefully we didn't get too crazily technical. If we really wanted to, I'd come over to Steve's area and we would have investigated some of the stuff that he's doing, because he's always getting very technical. But if you guys want, then come back on Thursday.
Throw it out there Thursday, guys, and if you want anything from the shop, you can call in at 623-217-4959 or visit the website shocktherapist.com.
One Take Wonder, Steve, boom. We'll see you guys Thursday.